This is your chance to experience the NFL like never before. The Irish NFL Show is touching down stateside, and we want you on the team. Explore iconic football towns: Chicago, Green Bay, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and make memories with fellow Irish NFL fans on the trip of a lifetime. We've partnered with Bernard Hayes Travel, a trusted travel partner with over 30 years' experience. We'll look after everything: flights, accommodation, transfers, match tickets, social events, and everything in between. An unforgettable experience. Picture yourself in the stands at Soldier Field, Lambeau, or MetLife, roaring on your team. Register your interest today at irishnflshow.com/tours. Don't just watch the game, live it. Oh, I want to go back. I miss it. Can we have the new season already? Too long to wait. Welcome to the Irish NFL Show, live in association with QuinnBet. We're back in Ireland, streaming live for the first time since we wrapped our Super Bowl 60 week-long coverage. Thank you for watching, listening, and for getting in touch wherever you are throughout that brilliant and crazy week. We have a different schedule in the off-season, just to let you know, and we will be taking a break from the Monday and Thursday live shows, bar this evening, obviously. We'll be putting out our regular diet of interviews and podcasts, so fear not, you will have your regular dose of Irish NFL Show to get you through the off-season, and we'll go live, of course. If there's a big trade or if there's some breaking news that we need to jump on, we'll flag that on our social channels, so keep engaged with us there. We will also have live shows when the free agency frenzy kicks off in the week of March 9th, which isn't actually that long to wait now that I say it, because we're halfway through February at this stage. So the lads getting downcast thinking, I thought the break was going to be longer before you were going to start flogging us again. We do have a bit of time to rest and reflect, and we wanted to look back on the season that was, and indeed the Super Bowl that was, before we start into the off-season in earnest. Kieran O'Donovan, Kieran Boyle, Shane Brennan, and Brian O'Leary joining me, Conor Brophy, for that recap. We thought we'd start off, Kieran O'Donovan, and no better man than you to rate the season that's been. All right, the dust has settled, and hopefully the recency bias we can move past. Was it a good, bad, or indifferent season if you factor in the entire season and the Super Bowl that came at the end of it?
Yeah, I was trying to be as positive as I could, and kick the show off on a good note. But I'm not 100% sure it's going to go down as the best season of all time. It did give us some great matchups, and it sprinkled in some classic games throughout the year. And we'll get to some of those in a while. We had some fantastic trilogies. I really enjoyed the Bears Packers trilogy that we were treated to. Seahawks Rams as well served up some really memorable moments. I think we saw the emergence of the NFC West as a powerhouse, the NFC North. But where I thought we were massively lacking this season was the AFC. I thought the AFC really flattered to deceive right throughout the season. I mean, the Patriots had a great story throughout right throughout the season. The Jags gave us a great story, but some of the bright stars from early on, like the Colts, they faded away into obscurity as the season went on. And just the biggest letdown, and we'll talk about disappointments in a while as well, was just the fact that even though I was all for the Chiefs having a down year, I was there for that, no problem, no issue with that. I just didn't see it coinciding with Lamar and the Ravens being out of the picture so early, the Bengals being out of the picture so early. Josh Allen and the Bills gave us some great moments, but again they faded again and missed their opportunity. So I think it was a very heavy, one-sided season. I think all of the strengths and much of the excitement, much of the talking points came on the NFC side, but the AFC I think let down, and you don't want a 32 team or a 2 division or a 2 conference league being so one-sided, and for that reason I wouldn't say it'll live on in the lore of the greatest seasons of all time.
Well, Shane, it begs to bring you in at this point as the lone, as you often point out, Ranger for the AFC on the show. You're the only person who supports an AFC team. Is that fair? I mean, I think, like, first of all, without being negative either, I kind of doubled down on Kieran's point in that I thought it was an eventful season, and as it was going on, there was plenty of thrills and spills. But I thought, the way I often think, whether you're watching the All-Ireland, whether you're watching the FA Cup, whatever you're watching, the thrills and spills and the upsets are all great until you get to the business end of the season. You're like, actually, this is going to be quite predictable now from here on in, because there's a massive difference between the wheat and the chaff. I enjoyed the season as it went, but as I reflect on it now, I'm kind of left to agree with what Kieran said, that actually it wasn't a great season. I think it's the AFC that did kind of let us down in the end.
And I love the AFC, obviously. I'm speaking with my heart over my head here, as I was on the Saturday outside Levi's Stadium. Look, I think it's a very fair point. The NFC, we knew coming into the playoffs, whoever won the NFC was going to win the Super Bowl. There's a very clear quality gap. It's funny. Look,
I spent the whole goddamn week in San Francisco trying to convince myself the opposite, Shane. I feel like an idiot now. How did I not see that coming?
I felt like an idiot
in San Fran, Shane.
Well, I felt like an idiot because I got off the bus on the Super Bowl Sunday, and I just felt it in the air, and I'm like, "Oh, the Seahawks are winning this match," and I'm gonna be make look like an absolute cod during the thing. Not Kieran Donovan, like an actual
fresh cod.
I tell you, the Eamon Duffy quotes are flying this evening.
But I guess just in terms of the actual quality, look, the fact that the AFC have come in with this sort of core four of great quarterbacks that we always talk about before every season, and only one of them made the playoffs, and even then, didn't fulfill the potential in the way that it should have been. It definitely leaves you. It leaves you feeling unfulfilled. I think it's almost like eating a Chinese meal. You feel like it felt good in the moment, but you're hungry again an hour later. That's kind of the way it was with some of the AFC. And as much as people are looking back and saying, "Oh, thank God we don't have to watch the Chiefs again," and getting sick of watching them, when they're not in there, you realize actually, there's a quality there, there's a greatness there, which when it's not in the playoffs, it does lack something, it does miss something. Now left the door open for a weaker team to progress through to the Super Bowl on that side of things. And look, I mean, what do we want in the season overall? Do we want to see the same 3 or 4 teams doing well every year, like we're watching Barcelona, Real Madrid in the Liga? No, we want to have teams flipping from up to down. We want to have hope where there was no hope before. And we got plenty of that across the league. But again, a lot of that was on the NFC side of things. We talked about Chicago, I think, being one of the great stories. But definitely, look coming near the end of the playoffs, the AFC playoffs in particular were disappointing because Houston had great potential, didn't show up. Denver had the problem with the quarterback. It was Josh Allen's year to go and take it and to try and seal his position as being spoken about as one of the greats among Patrick Mahomes of our era, and he didn't take that opportunity. And even the Chargers as well. You look at the piece that they could have put together, and injuries kind of went against them. It was a very clear quality gap, not quite to the level as it was in the 80s back when the NFC went on. What was it, a 13-14 season run of winning the Super Bowl consistently? It wasn't, it didn't quite feel like that, but you definitely want coming into next year that the big guns in the AFC, you want to see your Lamar Jacksons, your Joe Burrows, and your Patrick Mahomes fit on a team that's coherent and in a position where they can sort of bring back these gladiatorial battles, which I think a lot of people were missing from this year's postseason.
Kieran Boyle, I don't know if you see it differently, but I mean, to both Shane and Kieran's point, I thought by the time you got to where everything was really in the mixer, you arrive in the playoffs, even on the NFC side, you have a 49ers team who did brilliantly to get as far as they did, given the injuries that they battled. And we made this point many, many times. You didn't get the best version of the 49ers then, and they were ruthlessly dispatched in the playoffs as a result. Lions weren't there, Ravens weren't there, Chiefs weren't there, and the Eagles didn't show up in anything like the form that they were in when they won the Super Bowl last year, and it just diluted the overall quality, I found. Now, that's great to Shane's point, meant for a great run for the Broncos, great run for the Patriots, great run for the Bears, and so it was something of a season for the teams that haven't been doing well for a while, and there was something in it for the underdog, and that's nice as well, and it lent the season a flavour, but the quality was lacking.
Yeah, I think that when you look back on the season, I think you're right. I think the quality did kind of lack overall. I think we started the season off well. Week 1 was the Ravens. Yeah, the Ravens and the Bills game when Lamar kind of threw it away, and that was the fumbles, and it was kind of like, oh, this is going to be a repeat performance from the Ravens. But I think overall, with the fact that the Chiefs it was a down year for them, and they weren't really a factor. Obviously, it left the door open for the Bills, and they got as far as they could. I'm not as down on the AFC as maybe Shane and Kieran are. I mean, we still have the Jags and the Texans kind of slugging it out in that AFC South division, which has been dormant for decades almost. So there was a little bit of hope in there, but I think the overall theme, I mean, for me,
and the Colts made a run there too as well until they ran out of steam.
Yeah, but for me, the overall, when I think of the season, what sticks out for me the most is defense. Defense just dominated for me the entire season. I mean, the teams that were stacked on defense and had depth on defense are the ones that ultimately ended up in the playoffs. And the teams that didn't and were paper thin on the defense, such as, we saw Tampa Bay, really struggle to keep the ball out of the red zone. And of course the Lions, who just weren't able to deal with all the injuries. So for me, defense is really what sticks out in the entire season. And we did have, with the Chiefs kind of slipping and the Eagles flattering to deceive most of the season. Obviously, the Bengals are just, they're just stuck in perpetual kind of hell right now with what's going on with that team. So I think, defense just stood out for me. And those teams that were stacked enough and had depth enough and were able to carry that through. However, when the playoffs happened and the teams with, predominantly defensive teams, such as the Texans and the Broncos, it kind of came to a shuddering halt on the other side of the ball. They just weren't able to get it done. So I think primarily defense sticks out to me for this 25 season.
To that point, Brian, and I might look to you maybe to kind of look back from the perspective of the Super Bowl that's just gone in the rearview mirror now, Super Bowl 60. I was having this debate with a couple of people in work today, a couple of other NFL fans, and we were saying, like, some people said, "Oh, it was a terrible Super Bowl." I didn't think it was a terrible Super Bowl, actually, to the point that Kieran just made, because we saw what, to my mind, and the figures bear this out, the analysis bears this out over the course of the season, one of historically the best defenses we've ever seen put on an absolute masterclass in that game. And to give them their great credit, the Patriots made a game of it much longer than should have been the case, because they really stepped up and played great defense for the most part and kept the Seahawks out of the end zone to keep it close.
Yeah, similar kind of conversations that I had over the past week, kind of when I returned to work. Disappointing Super Bowl, staying up very late to watch that game. It was very one-sided.
It's not all about offense, right? There's three phases to the game.
No, and I was referred to being boys because we were there, but no, it was sublime defensive strategic planning around where the holes were in that offensive line for the Patriots, and the Seahawks continuously went after it time and time again. And to the Patriots' credit, they stuck in there as best they could, even at 9.5 time. Was they were in the game. It never really felt like they were in the game. It felt more like a 16-17 type of game. But sometimes you have to acknowledge, like, the defense win championships, and we were tongue-in-cheek saying that during that week, where we're kind of, is it not necessarily on Sam Darnold's, within his remit to go and win this game. They can rely on this defense, and the defense has stood up time and time again over the course of the season. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know Shane didn't sit beside me for those 3.5 quarters. It was great to see Shane get his independent article ready in the fourth quarter as opposed to having to wait till the end.
Did he not enjoy it because he was sitting beside you, or because the Patriots lost?
A bit of combination of both, I imagine. Connor. But no, I agree with you. Like, we didn't get to see the Seahawks like firsthand. Like, we're quite fortunate. We go to the international series. We had a number of games in which we traveled over to stateside this year. It's like a really successful year for the show, but Seahawks was a team that was omitted from our watch list. We hadn't got a chance to see them firsthand. So to see them in the Super Bowl, see what the masterful display they put on, and to see that kind of where we were in the stadium situated, to see that kind of walk-off, essentially game-winning touchdown where they took the interception and returned it, it was significant. We straight away, you're talking about next season, their favourites to the Super Bowl 61. Maybe it's a bit too early to be getting into that level of conversation, but if they can keep that team together with a very young head coach, they could be thereabouts again.
I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Brian, just for a moment of the season, but I'm going to throw my own 2 cents in here because it
Don't pick mine. Don't pick mine.
Well, that's why I want to go first, because I want to get mine out there before somebody picks it. I have to frantically come up with another one on the spot. But my moment of the season was Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl. I think for me, it wasn't just a redemption story for him. It hopefully, and it won't really fundamentally change, but it may start to at least leaven the way that people dismiss players and quarterbacks in particular who are drafted high and who don't immediately splash in the league. Because, I mean, this is a guy who only over the past 2 seasons has pulled on the Earthworm Jim supersuit and become a completely different player. Do you like that reference, Shane? I'm trying to tailor my references to a younger demographic. That's not really my generation, but I'm putting in the work to kind of come up with stuff that would be more relevant to you. I'm putting in the man hours here. But guy who was drafted high by the Jets. God loved him. God love him going there, and almost had his career ruined as a result. And you know, it's mad to think, even as of last season, and we'll get to this a little bit later, or I'll get to it in another context before we wrap up this evening, that last year, and we, to a certain extent, were buying into this too. And I have to hold my hands up and say that I bought into it a little bit. We're dismissing him again, saying, yeah, he'll only get you so far. And look what happened against the Rams in the playoffs last year. And look what happened when they were playing the Lions, when he was at the Vikings for the #1 seed. Again, once the pressure's on, he sees ghosts and he collapsed. And we probably weren't fair to the state of the Vikings line at that point and how that rebounded on him and constrained what he was able to do against, to be fair, also two really good defenses and two really strong defensive coordinators in Chris Shula and Brian Flores. And it turns out that in the right setting and with the right team around him, Sam Darnold flourished. And you know, we get to games of the season as well. Sam Darnold, to my mind, played in a couple of the games of the season and played a great part in them, not least the NFC Championship game. He did everything that could have been required of him, and he bore the whole thing, I thought, with unbelievable dignity. And I don't just mean this season, I mean the whole season. Like, we talked about it in Super Bowl week, and we talked about it in the run-up to the Super Bowl, how this guy has been basically answering the same goddamn question for about 5 years, like, which boils down to, why are you not good enough? And I'm just reflecting, Brian, on the fact that, you know, we were both in Allegiant Stadium 3 years ago for the Super Bowl, and Sam Darnold was the backup to Brock Purdy when the Niners lost that game. And 3 years later, he's back from the dead. You know, everybody had forgotten about him then. He's a backup. People probably couldn't have even named the backup for the 49ers because Brock Purdy is so generally durable and had played throughout that season. And like, what a story that is. And that for me was the moment of the season. I was delighted for him, and I was delighted for what his story means for a lot of quarterbacks who've been kicked up and kicked down the league. I know, like, you can say, well, bring out your tiny violin for the multimillionaires, but man, it's a goldfish bowl. And I was reflecting on it when we were in the tent after the game for the post-game interviews at the Super Bowl. Before we went to the Seahawks side, I popped in firstly to see Mike Vrabel, and secondly to see what Drake May had to say. And, you know, just to give people a flavor of how close you are to the players and how intimate that setting is. Like, it's a tent out on the playing field beside the stadium. So if you've been to the Aviva Stadium for rugby games or for soccer matches, you've pictured the practice pitch out the back of the Aviva. It's that close to the main stadium. There's a marquee on that pitch, and it's divided into the Seahawks go on one side, the Patriots go on the other, and you are like arm's length away from players, coaches, whoever they are. And there's no place to hide because they're contractually bound to be there. So they bring in all of the best players, all the top players, all the big talking points from the game, and they have to account for themselves, good, bad, or indifferent to the media. And, you know, you're close enough to see the tears in Mike Vrabel's eyes and to see the colour drain from his skin, and close enough to hear Drake May's voice cracking and to see how broken he is and to see the pressure that's on him and people just asking him straight out, where did it go wrong? Why didn't you play better? And it's, at the same time, you can hear the Seahawks players celebrating through the tent because it's only a marquee, and you can smell the cigar smoke. It's brutal. Like, it is just brutal. And yeah, they're compensated really, really well for it. But I mean, Sam Darnold has been through that year in, year out, week in, week out, team in, team out, and finally came out the other side of it. So sorry, I've over-talked there, but that, Brian, is my moment of the season. What's yours?
Connor, you're going to love my moment of the season. Kieran O'Donnell's not going to love it. And Shane will think this is hilarious, bear in mind the irony of what we spoke about time and time again in the last year since we've done that show. DJ Moore's walk-off touchdown for the Bears in Soldier Field. Not so much because it's a fantastic play. It was, and they put it all on Williams to go and make that huge play in overtime. But more about the enormity of actually the Bears finally getting over the hump. Because for years, the Packers have owned the Bears. And you even spoke about during the season where you were covering the game in Tottenham last year, and the Bears were putting up a comprehensive victory against the Jags, and all the Bears fans were worried about was slagging off Packers. It was like as if they're living in their heads with rent-free. Well, I think now it's kind of reversed now. I think the Bears are living in the Packers and rent-free because of those two games at the back end of the season. But that game was so strange in a way. Like, it has a kind of similar to the other game. The Packers were so dominant. It took huge plays, an onside kick at the end for the Bears to even put themselves in a position, and a bit of a Hail Mary type of touchdown at the end, which is not too dissimilar to what the Bears got against the Rams. But the love affair with the Bears towards the end of the season, and in a roundabout way, it's a kind of crying shame that they didn't find their way into the championship game, because I think we might have got a really compelling game as well. As much as we got with the Rams and the Seahawks, I think we would have been found themselves in a great spot there to see a lovely Bears Seahawks championship game. But the Bears have struggled for year in, year out to get over the hump. Ben Johnson is a great head coach. Everyone knew he was a great head coach, but it was a kind of get to the stage where they find that signature victory, and that puts them in a good state going into the playoffs to actually go and beat the Packers. And I know you touched on that inevitability where if the Bears got into the playoffs and they played the Packers, they would lose, but they didn't lose. But it took a lot to get them over the hump. And the celebrations in Soldier Field that night was like this wave of 20 years of depression that Bears fans have been going through, and to finally get over the line, and the nature of that touchdown. And the one piece that really sticks in my mind was the press conference where Williams said, I can't say enough about these coaching staff. They trust me to go and make plays like that. And then they came and said the same about the quarterback. Look, every NFL season is very different, Connor. If I was a Bears fan right now, I'd be looking at that 25-1 that Quinn Bay have and thinking, why not the Bears next season? Because they were very close. They've got a lot of steps.
What do you mean you would? I bet you've already done it, haven't you?
You went when it was still 30-1. That's why the price came in.
I won't lie. That's why I dropped. I got it early. Look, Ben Johnson is not complacent either. Connor, we spoke about it over in at the Super Bowl. We spoke about a lot of different teams, but he said, look, we're where everybody else is now. We're going to start again, rebuild, and go again next season. But for Bears fans who've been in the doldrums for many years, to see that victory and the nature of that game, and it was a Saturday night game, so everyone got to watch it as a single game in prime time, as opposed to something that was just popping off in red zone towards the back end of a game where Scott Hansen jumping from one screen to another. For fans to be able to enjoy that on a Saturday night was very compelling, and that for me is my moment of the season.
Kieran Donovan, you've had to listen to that, so I'll let you move the narrative on very quickly and pick your moment of the season. I'm sure Brian hasn't robbed your moment of the season from you there.
Well, I flip-flop between two, and just going to give an honourable mention to the Micah Parsons injury. It's not my favourite moment of the season, but I think it's a pivotal moment of the season.
Interesting. I was gonna call that not as moment of the season as something to be celebrated, but I thought it was the sliding doors moment of the season.
And not so much in terms of how far could the Packers have gone, because I really don't believe the Packers were built to go very deep into the playoffs. I'm actually looking at the knock-on effect, the kind of butterfly effect. How much did it potentially elevate how we're looking back on the Bears season? Because those games, there was such fine margins in those two Bears victories against the Packers. You'd wonder, would they have gone on to would the Packers maybe have stolen one, if not both of those games? And you'd imagine if they had won the second game, the trilogy would have concluded in Lambeau. So look, there's all kinds of permutations to that, but I'm looking at the AFC side and what it may have done in terms of possibly costing the Broncos one more game, because the Packers were in control of that game with when Parsons went down. If they get over the line there, maybe the Broncos lose a seeding. Maybe the Bills aren't going to Mile High, and the Bills were so close. I mean, the Bills, we forget about the fact that the Bills were beaten in overtime, and we had that another moment of the year where there was the catch, that the interception that could have been a reception, so just such fine margins. I think that Micah Parsons' injury had a huge effect on a knock-on effect on many teams, and not most the Packers, strangely. But I'm going to just divert from that. I'm going to get very parochial and emotional for a second. The moment of the season for me was sitting in Croke Park when the girl up the road here in West Cork sang the national anthem, when Lyra gave the most stunning, most powerful rendition of Aran Naveen I've ever heard in my life. And I grew up, my childhood, all throughout my childhood, the pinnacle of any sporting event was to travel to Croke Park for an All-Ireland final. And yes, I did get to go to a lot of them. And yes, I did get to see Cork win a few early on. But for all the renditions of Aran Naveen I've heard, that was the most powerful, most stunning rendition of our national anthem. And it just, I'm an emotional guy when it comes to the national anthem. I had tears in my eyes when she was finished, and it just, for me, it really brought home how Ireland put itself on the global stage, in hosting this event for the first time, in hosting an NFL regular season game. And I think the people involved, even listening to Clada belting out their bangers throughout the game, it just brought home how well this event was staged and how ready we were for the occasion. And so that was my moment of the season. It was just an immensely prideful moment for me.
Oh, lovely. I'm tearing up just listening to you. Kieran Boyle, I'll give you the unenviable task of following that. What's your moment of the season?
Jesus, how am I supposed to... Jesus.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Well, similar to Brian's, mine has to be the Cole Kmet catch. It's just one of those moments where, the game is on the line. Caleb's scrambling. Where's he going to go? He retreats, 20, goes 20 odd yards back, yokes it up in between. I think it was Durant and Quentin Lake as well, got in between those two. And the catch, the moment, everything about it. I mean, the dog scared the crap out of the dog. He starts running around the place, jumping up and down with the sun, because it's one of those really cool moments that only the NFL brings. When things look down and out for the Bears, it looked like they've just exhausted every avenue.
But it's funny you say it, because I was watching the 49ers documentary that you recommended, and if anyone watching hasn't seen it, just go and watch it. The AMC one, the rise of the Niners. Whether you're a Niners fan or not, amazing. Like, the first episode basically leads up to the Dwight Clark catch and how that changed the whole trajectory of that franchise. And the Cole Kmet catch kind of felt similar to that in Chicago.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, it's just the randomness of it, the fact that, you see Williams retreating, he yokes it up, who knows where the ball is going to go, and then the screen pans to a lone Cole Kmet in the corner. Safeties and corners all over the place, don't know where the ball is going, and he comes down with the catch untouched. It was a phenomenal moment. I think what it meant for the Bears, we know how the game finished, but, that was probably the pinnacle and the highlight of the whole season for the Bears. Just a great moment. One of those that will be replayed through the decades. Obviously won't be as kind of well known as the Clark catch, but still, a really, really cool moment this season. I do want to give an honorable mention to kickers. I know I crap on kickers a lot, and I will. It's a fact. I'm not the biggest fan of kickers in the world, but I will give a shout out to the Jags.
Good
kickers.
God Almighty!
As God is my witness, I'm going to praise somebody. I was at the preseason game. It was the first game of the season against the Steelers in a very, very hot and sweaty Everbank Stadium, and Little came out and dropped a 70. I think it was measured at 73 yards when all was said and done. Just a great moment. He's a hell of a character, and I think that was just a nice kind of kickoff for the Jag season and where it led. But that was a cool moment, watching the longest ever recorded field goal. Whether you can debate whether it was a real stat or whatever, because it hasn't gone on the record books, but still, to watch it live was pretty cool.
That's a great call, actually, and it just reminded me of Brian, when you and I talked to Jeff Duncan from the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, covers the Saints, great beat writer and a great friend of the show, and he was talking about watching Charlie Smith, who we were lucky enough to meet in San Francisco at the Consulate General in San Francisco, and thanks to the Consul General Michal Smith for inviting us along to that occasion. But he was saying Charlie Smith is pinging him over from 70 yards in practice. Like, I don't know whether the Saints are due to go to Mile High this year, but that will be one to watch next season. That might be. I'd like to get the QuinnBet odds on Charlie Smith corking a 70-yarder in a game, if not next season, at some point. It certainly seems like he has the leg for it. Shane, your moment of the season.
I can't remember, was it against the Falcons or against the Panthers, when Charlie Smith hit the winning field goal? He turned and he looked at the opposition bench with his arms out like Christ the Redeemer, like, yeah, I'm that guy. That was the moment where I'm like, yeah, he's fully tuned into the American culture here. Down county footballers don't do that, but he's doing it. He's properly looking at and making sure that his divisional rivals know that he's the top gun. So I have to give him that there, and that's sort of my.
Have you seen Top Gun yet? By the way,
no, I have not. I was
shit.
about
Your off-season homework. You were supposed to watch it before we went to San Francisco.
I should have watched it on the plane. It was on Aer Lingus, and I just decided to watch the Shawshank Redemption instead. I don't ask me why. So anyway, but my moment of the season, right? I'll be brief with this one, but this one I found funny. Week 5, Monday Night Football, Jacksonville Jaguars against the Kansas City Chiefs. Trevor Lawrence takes the ball, falls over his own offensive lineman, manages to get up. 2 Chiefs defenders can't get him. He manages to run to the left-hand side. Another 2 Chiefs defenders, for some reason, aren't awake enough to tackle him. He gets over the line and scores the winning touchdown. It makes the Chiefs go to 2-3 and puts the Jags at 4-1. Talk about the trajectory of both of these seasons. I was the idiot who spent most of the season expecting the Chiefs are going to wake up this week, lads. They're going to wake up this week, and they never did. And this is the thing. I think, like, the psychological damage of being absolutely embarrassed by the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 59, I think, was shown by a lack of concentration in a key moment here. And then the Jaguars were able to build off this to be one of the good news stories. And I definitely think that we're looking ahead next year to be one of the better sides. I know they had maybe a bit of a down afterwards, because this is a week or two before they went and played in Wembley in one of the worst London games we've seen, and that's saying something because some of these London games haven't been very entertaining. But yeah, that was if I'm going for a slightly left field one, I'm going for that one. I thought that was a very telling moment for both of these teams early in the season, as it turned out.
We'll recap on more of the highlights from the season just gone and look to some of the things that we'll be watching in the off season right after this.
You know great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
She's barely made it back from getting the glass of cordial there. Cut it quite fine. Right, we move on to game of the 2025-2026 season now. Kieran Boyle, I'll start with you. As we said, maybe the quality somewhat lacking during the season, but that didn't leave us short of dramatic games, dramatic finishes, and some great 60-minute highlight reels throughout the course of the season. What was the pick of them for you?
I think the pick for me, I mean, yeah, there was some really good regular season games. Obviously, the Bills-Ravens was a real good one to kick off week one. But I'm going to go to the wild card weekend. I know that was a great couple of days of football. And again, I'm going to go back to the Bears-Packers game. We all remember how that the Packers were kind of coasting and taking it easy in the first half, and that infamous shot of Love and I think it was one of his O-linemen just kind of chilling and grinning and laughing on the sideline as they went up. I think they were up 21-6 at one stage. And I think for everything that it meant to the Bears, I mean, it was just a phenomenal kind of comeback. Everything that went on there. It was the 4th and 8 to Odunze, the finish for DJ Moore. It was just a great moment. And again, we kind of talked at the start about the dilution. Maybe the Chiefs weren't really at it this year. But, you know, when some of the top dogs are down, I mean, we've seen it in the Premier League, you know, when Leicester won the league that year. You know, when the top dogs are down, that's the chance for the other teams to kind of grab that limelight, and that's what the Bears did. Everything about the game was great. Sorry, Kieran, the capitulation from the Packers that just went away from the game. Just nothing went right. The McManus kicks that that didn't go over, and that for me, I mean, it's hard to pick, you know, just one game out of the season, but that one sticks out to me the most. I think probably because it was in the mix of that really great wild card weekend that started off with the Panthers game when it looked like they were about to get dog walked and they came back. But that's probably the game of the season for me.
Jesus, poor Kieran O'Donovan. Like this whole podcast is tremendously triggering. He's taking shots like Sonny Corleone at the toll booth. Brian, that's a film reference for you. What was your game of the season? You and Kieran got to witness one of them at MetLife. Was that MetLife? No, that was at the Link, was it?
No, it was in MetLife. We wouldn't have got out of the Link. I don't think we would have got out of the Link alive if that was. Not going to the Link ever. Like, sorry, I was in the middle of booking cinema for me and Shane. We're going to go see Top Gun, Shane. I've never seen Top Gun either. So
Danger Zone.
Danger Zone. Connie, you touched on it earlier that like, in a roundabout way, it was a compelling season. Was it a great season? And you kind of tongue-in-cheek said you're happy for all the surprise, but then when you get to the back end of the season, you know the results kind of you get what you expect. But it's the Broncos built for me, and I didn't think it would be. I was torn on that, and I'm sure someone else will probably lob in an NFC West Thursday night clash, which was fantastic and a great comeback for the eventual Super Bowl champions. But this one for me was compelling from the first snap to the very end, because the Broncos were questioned going into the playoffs whether they could do it offensively, and they came up big time in that game. And Bo Nix had a huge game, and Josh Allen had a huge game. And you talk about sliding doors moments, kind of like that 20 seconds before halftime in that particular game, where they gave up 10 points effectively. They totally changed the dynamic of that game. The Bills looked in control. They were driving at one stage. You go up by double digits. Cook fumbles the ball. Broncos recover. Even prior to halftime, it looks like it's going to go in level pegging. They give up the big touchdown to Humphrey. Then, you know, crazy decision to try and make a play and try to get into field goal range. Results in a fumble. The ball spins back 20 yards and they get a field goal. And then all of a sudden, they're down by 10. Still come back. Still more turnovers. It looks like the Bills, we can argue whether it was a fumble, whether it was a catch.
Yeah.
I mean,
As
so
you
much
describe
to
it and all the incidents, it's mad to think that all of that was packed into such a tight period of time.
Yeah.
What a game. Yeah.
And that Monday, we were discussing whether it was a cut catch, whether it was an interception, and some of us have different opinions on it, and we still do. And in the end, the Bills, yet again, for Josh Allen, like this is the Josh Allen saga that a lot of us are feeling really sorry for in terms of he's such a fantastic quarterback. And sorry, Shane, I genuinely believe if the Bills had got through that game and went into Foxborough, they probably inevitably would have won that game and gone to the Super Bowl. I think everybody as a neutral would have loved to see the Seahawks, Buffalo Bills Super Bowl. Not to say that we didn't get a good Super Bowl, but I think the Bills are this storyline. And you spoke about it earlier. In a year where Chiefs were on a down year, the Ravens were on a down year, the Bills weren't to a certain extent. They still were very much in the mix. They went into Foxborough and were 21-0 down, showed their mettle and came back. And we all kind of felt was the Broncos were competing, the Bills inevitably would have come out and be victorious. And then the head coach gets fired, within 2-3 days. And then they don't even go external. They bring in essentially the offensive coordinator to be the head coach, which is a bit of a strange one for me. Anyway, there you have it. I don't think there's many more games that will have as much drama as we got in a season where not all the playoff games were compelling. That certainly was one of them.
Shane, Sky has got tone on you when he's releasing his missiles, a reference that you won't even get because you haven't seen Top Gun, precisely because you haven't seen Top Gun. He called out Bears 49ers as his game of the season. That's a sneaky good pick, actually. That was a classic game, and probably the one where the Bears showed the offensive capability that they have under Ben Johnson to keep pace with the leaders in the NFC, even though they ended up on the losing end of that one. What was your game of the season, though?
Well, my reaction to a game of the season was definitely on week 4 when I woke up on Monday morning. Kieran O'Donovan was in the other bed in the hotel room we were staying in Dublin. And I woke up to the noise of, fuck it anyway, as I was watching the highlights of Packers against Cowboys. So I was like, whenever I think, whenever.
How did your audition for Win the Shakes the Barley go?
Wow, it felt like there were 2 Kieran O'Donovans in the podcast.
I know. I don't think I'll be allowed to drink a clean pint of Murphy's. Or
Tom Cruise is far and away over here.
In fairness to that Bears 49ers game, look, it was a great shootout, and it's one of those games where like it's everything goes right for both teams all the time until there's one moment where the Bears had to go for the field goal and it meant that the momentum was gone in that kind of a shootout. And they're always great games, and that really had NFC number 1 seed ramifications. But, and I'm sorry, lads, because I'm just going to take the obvious game of the season here. Brian already alluded to Week 16, Thursday Night Football, Seahawks versus the Rams. Not only was it nuts, the fact that the Seahawks managed to get the victory on the 2-point conversion at the end, which is obviously in overtime, which is kind of the way to do it. The fact that they got the 2-point conversion off the backwards throw hit off the helmet, which is just picked up by, I can't even remember who the receiver was.
It was Charbonnet, wasn't it? It was Charbonnet.
I think you're right. Yeah, it was Charbonnet. Just picked it up in the end zone as if it was nothing. The fact that you think of how much you talk with Sam Darnold.
That was the craziest play of the season, hands down. Like bizarre.
100%. It was nuts. I mean, I talk about Sam, like what we're talking about Sam Darnold. Oh, he threw 4 interceptions against the Rams a couple weeks ago. He threw 2 tonight and they lost again. And we're talking about the Rams as being probably going to win that division. They would have ended up both in 13 wins the way it worked out because the Rams ended up bottling it against the Falcons the week after. But maybe they mightn't have done so had it been there. And then we're talking about the Seahawks not having the home field advantage. But it's more fundamentally, we talked to everybody who's from Seattle and San Francisco and said, when was the moment you knew you could win the Super Bowl? It was that night. And even like just Al Michaels, one of the better performances of him in the commentary booth this year. From him just coming in, it was the energy of that moment and the energy of that stadium, and the 12s were definitely reawakened then to end up quite literally being seismic by the time we got to the playoffs. So look, that was by far the game of the season for me, and it's one that I still sort of look back on and watch the highlights of, because it's every time I watch it I just can't believe it. And we know that's going to be like the biggest chapter. That's going to be the big turning point when the America's game is made about this season. That's going to be the one that they all focus on.
Well, it's all 3 of those games, I think, and it's an excellent point. And I won't dwell too much on mine because it's related to the lengthy soliloquy I had on Sam Darnold earlier. But I actually had the championship game, the NFC championship game, as my game of the season because it was the final chapter of that trilogy. And I remember well how we talked about the Seahawks going down to the Rams when they lost a game in which they were well behind, in which Darnold turned the ball over. I think they had 5 total turnovers in that game, and the defense held them in it. And I remember, like, in particular, Kieran O'Donovan, you and I saying, I was actually so impressed that the Seahawks managed to be in that game at the end and actually had a chance to win it when everything was going wrong. And I was kind of starting to think, well, like, if they just cut down on the mistakes offensively, they're going to be really, really hard to stop. Then we had that crazy game that you mentioned. But the NFC Championship game for me was the big prove-it game for the Seahawks offense, because the Rams absolutely emptied the tank, went all over the field on that Seahawks defense. It was the one and only time really in the season where we saw them get exposed and saw them get owned by a real offensive juggernaut. And Darnold had to throw for 345 yards, 3 touchdowns. They had to balance that with the running game, and they kind of had to dig themselves out of a hole. They really had to step up, and they did. And they showed us the complementary football that ultimately saw them lift the Lombardi 2 weeks later. Biggest disappointment of the season, and not to be on a downer, but Brian, what was your biggest disappointment of the season just gone?
Yeah, there's a few, Connor, and I'm trying to figure out what the right one is, because we're kind of cross-referencing on quite a few tonight. I'm going to go with the Steelers, because they came to Dublin, they won the game. I really enjoyed the press conference. Like, we've been to numerous games over the course of the last few years, and you go into the press conference and it's all, you say the appropriate things at the appropriate time, relevant to the game, but there was something really compelling about going into that one. The Mike Tomlin spoke how proud he was to bring the team over. Aaron Rodgers said he thoroughly enjoyed his time here. And I love the way he kind of blew ESPN up in that particular press conference, saying, I said I wish we came earlier in the week, and then all of a sudden ESPN were putting out articles saying, he's challenging the NFL as to why they can't come to Dublin sooner. He said, that's not what I meant. I meant is, I wanted to embrace the opportunity to be in Ireland for a longer period than what we had. And he meant that in a real genuine manner. And then Hayward, who I had the opportunity to speak to in the most unusual circumstance at the Super Bowl, and he in the toilet in Major Row, spoke about how he'd love to come back to Ireland.
Sorry, who broke the bro code there and started the conversation in the toilets? Like, who was the transgressor there? We need to know how to.
It was Cam Hayward. He saw the branding. He saw the Irish NFL show branding.
It was Cam Hayward. He saw I was like, what's the next word?
He saw the Irish NFL show branding. But as the season evolved, Connor, we didn't get to see the Aaron Rodgers storylines that I was really hoping we would see. Like, they won the division. Sorry, they won the division, but the week prior to that, when they were struggling against the Browns, like, they gave the Ravens another shot at it. And you can argue the Ravens are one of the most disappointing factors of the season as well, because, like, Lamar went to injured. They had all the players there and components to be a really strong side in the AFC. But the week prior to that was really disappointing, because they brought in Aaron Rodgers for situations like that, where they're down, they're not playing well, they're in the dog pound, and they have an opportunity to go down and win the game and secure the division. They didn't. They win. They go into the playoffs. It's a very, very flat performance. Bear in mind what they would have spoke about throughout the course of the season. We've been here before, as in wild card. We keep getting knocked out. We need to get above and beyond. We've won the division now. We secured a home game as opposed to being on the road in the wild card, and yet they had a really difficult, struggling performance. And the Texans, who didn't give up much the following week, go and beat them convincingly. So for Steelers fans, it's like kind of going, where are we? We're in the middle of the pecking order. We can't get a quarterback at the top end of the draft. We're not entirely sure if Aaron Rodgers is coming back. And Mike McCarthy, the head coach, who is a beloved Steelers fan, but people aren't kind of enticed by that hire. So for me, the Steelers are back in flux as to where they were 12 months ago.
I'll run through mine very quickly, Kieran O'Donovan, because you kind of covered it in your excellent summary at the start when we talked about the season that was and how you rated it. For me, the biggest disappointment was the failure of those 3 big quarterbacks and their teams in the AFC. The fact that we had a playoffs without Lamar, without Joe Burrow, without Patrick Mahomes, like, it certainly made for surprises, and it made for a novel Super Bowl, or not novel, but one that we weren't expecting. But it did rob us of colour and drama, and it also robbed us of quality. I'm hoping Mahomes comes back for his injury, hoping that the Bengals can do right by Burrow, and hoping that Lamar, under a new coaching setup, will flourish into the Lamar that we knew of old, and hopefully is injury-free this season. But Kieran O'Donovan, what was your biggest disappointment?
Yeah, I was thinking, and you could take your pick from those 3 teams, and it was always going to be, for me, one of those 3 teams. When you had to pick one, I picked the Bengals, because there was so much talk in the preseason about Are they going to secure T. Higgins? Are they going to secure Jamar Chase? Is Joe Burrow happy? Joe Burrow seems to be happy with his lot. Are they going to fix the defense? They got rid of their defensive coordinator, so if they fix the defense, they should be okay. If they even have a serviceable defense, after all that talk and they secured the offensive weapons, it was over before it started. We didn't even get a half a season out of the Bengals, and I know the turf toe, it took the wind out of their sails as well, and they did get off to was it 2-0 or 3-0 they went at the start of the season. That was great, but the Bengals again were a non-talking point when it came to the business end of the season, and that's not good enough when you've got who I think is possibly the most talented of those quarterbacks on your roster. I just think it was a flat-out disappointment, and I think that'll move on again into this season. It's going to be like Groundhog Day talking about the Bengals again in the off-season and trades, and how are they going to fix this? How are they going to fix that? And is Joe Burrow or insert QB's name, are any one of these guys going to get over the line in their career? Because there's just no guarantee that any of those guys are going to win a Lombardi.
Shane.
Somebody said the Giants. Oh no, wait, I probably shouldn't be saying that. I feel like I triggered too many. Now, to be honest with you, my real disappointment of the year, the 6-2 Buccaneers not making the playoffs. We look at the first half of the season with Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield's playing some really good football. Emeka Egbuka is lighting up things. Like they end October as 6-2 with a pretty convincing win against the Saints, and then really, really struggle. Only win 2 games over the course of November and December. I don't think that's being talked about enough. Like they had the chance, and obviously the way the NFC South ended up, it was permutations upon permutations. It should have never even got to that stage. Like they should have never let the Panthers get in. There's so many close games which they really had the quality to go and take control of it, and to let it slip away. I know obviously there's injuries, particularly with Baker, that they had to deal with over the course of the season, but I don't know. I just feel like almost schematically it was as if they had a really hot start to the season and they were figured out. Not unlike the Colts, but I think the Buccaneers to me are more disappointing because they were in a very winnable division and were in the driver's seat from early on with really good quarterback play, and it just completely collapsed. So they're my disappointment this season.
Kieran Boyle.
Well, similar theme to the Buccaneers. My biggest disappointment was the Lions. We all love watching the Lions. We love the theater. We love the offensive, kind of flair that they bring to the game. A team that went 15-2 in 24 to finishing the season 9-8, last in the division, couldn't get past the Vikings, couldn't get past the Packers. Listen, we all know that they lost Johnson and they lost Aaron Glenn, but I thought there was still enough, in that team to do damage in that division. Hutchinson back healthy, obviously Sonic and Knuckles. You got Jameson Williams. You got all the stars. St. Brown on offense, but and not to forget Tesla, the electric car. But what really hampered them, and I kind of discussed it a little bit at the start, was the defensive frailty and the lack of depth. That secondary got smoked towards the end of the season. I mean, they finished the season 3-4. They flattered to deceive when they beat the Giants that OT game. The Jameis game, and it looked like they were going to make a charge into December, but losing 3 of the last 4 just put the nail in the coffin. And the defensive frailties they just couldn't overcome. I mean, Joseph, Brian Branch, when Terry and Arnold went out injured, they just didn't have the backups. They didn't have the skill players to put in there to absorb the hit. And obviously, the teams that had the stronger defense was able to kind of advance in that division. So that's Lions 25 is my biggest disappointment.
I'm going to put you back on the clock here on, because I want to know what's the thing you're watching for this off season as our noted college football and draft expert. What are you looking for?
How long you got? Well, I mean,
he's had his 6 cups of coffee now, ladies and gentlemen. He's ready to roll.
All in the one serving.
Oh yeah, keep them coming. There's a couple of players there's a couple of things I'm looking forward to. Obviously, as a Giants fan, looking forward to what Harbaugh can do and turn this team around. But I'm going to dip into the college world. There's a couple of players I want to highlight because they're going to be at least top 10, maybe top 20, and some possibly, we could be looking at offensive and defensive rookie of the year. I'm going to start with Caleb Downs, safety out of Ohio State, started with Alabama, now with Ohio State. If you've seen the rise of the 49ers, you're obviously, and even if you haven't, you're familiar with Ronnie Lott's game. Just an absolute monster, hitting machine. 6 foot. This guy is not overly powerful. He's not a Kyle Hamilton, big, tall dude, but he's just a hitting machine. He's fearless, fast as lightning, and he hits. I mean, if you see the footage of Ronnie Lott just putting his body out there in all situations, We're looking at a kind of Jesse Bates, Kirby Joseph kind of safety, just a real bruiser. So I like him to go top 10. He's probably the best safety in the draft, so keep an eye out for him in the draft. Carnell Tate, the wide receiver, probably the best wide receiver in the class this year. 6'3", great hands. Kind of got lost with the Jeremiah Smith being the superstar of Ohio State. I really like him coming out, and a guy who had a really strong season with the Hurricanes with Messidor, but I'm going to go for Ruben Bain, a defensive end. South Florida seems to churn out defensive ends. You think of Brian Burns, from the Miami area, Jason Taylor, Jason Pierre-Paul, Calais Campbell. All these guys came out of the South Florida area, and Ruben Bain Jr. is probably going to go, if not top 15, top 20. He's going to be one of the top DNs in the draft. Just lightning fast. Him and Messidor on both flanks on the defensive end. I'm gonna put early projections as Tate and Ruben Bain as the offensive and defensive rookies of the year. I think there's just so much quality there. Again, we'll have time to talk about the draft down the line, but this is a draft that is more kind of focused on DNs, safeties, corners, that kind of stuff. So those are my three guys.
We're going to leave it there. Thanks very much for watching. That's your whole off-season coverage. Amazing. Love your work, Kieran. Kieran O'Donovan, what are you looking for in the off-season?
Just a couple of things. Number one, I'm intrigued to know where Malik Willis will end up. He's a guy that we saw a good few cameos from. As a Packers fan, I'd be disappointed to see him out of the building, and I was disappointed that he wasn't used more, that there weren't packages inserted for him late in the season. I want to see where he ends up, and I want to see what kind of an impact he has as a potential starter. Looking forward to Charlie Smith's second season in the league. I think he really proved that he's here, and he has the stuff that it takes to survive in this league. And and we've talked all year about kicking, and it is a battle of. It's a survival game at the start, and I think he can establish himself and have quite a successful career. And I'm so proud of what he accomplished this year. The big thing for me is how the Chiefs respond. We talked we had a conversation in the airport on the way home after the Super Bowl, and I kind of get a little bit not annoyed, but just a little bit frustrated at the fact that everybody assumes that the Chiefs and their dynasty are going to have another Indian summer because that's the script that the Patriots wrote. But that's the outlier. Like every other dynasty has risen and has fallen. And everybody is assuming that Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to come back at some point and get to and possibly win multiple more Super Bowls. I'm really interested to see how they bounce back. And I'm not putting it beyond them, but I just think it's more likely that they don't. I think it's more likely that Patrick Mahomes never plays in a Super Bowl again. And I don't think that's a drastic statement to make. And so I think I'm intrigued to see how they respond, because this was clearly, his lowest season since he started. He's been in how many?
It's not a drastic statement to make, and like I still think he probably will at some point. It may not actually be for the Chiefs, and I have a similar vision about Joe Burrow. I can imagine Joe Burrow playing a Super Bowl, but I don't think it's ever going to be for the Cincinnati Bengals because they just don't know what they're doing. That he's wasted there. But like to your point, and we've talked about this before, Tom Brady's career absolutely skews what people think is possible. That is an absolute massive outlier. That's probably never going to happen again, and it's a freak and a miracle that it did. He essentially had Bill Barnwell has brilliantly analyzed this: 3 Hall of Fame careers in the one. It's just nuts. And even he went a long stretch without winning another Super Bowl. He did get to them, but he didn't win them. And arguably the best part of his career, which is the real brain teaser about the whole thing, it's already against the odds that Patrick Mahomes has played in as many Super Bowls as he has.
Yeah, and no other franchise has managed to build 2 dynasties within the span of one player's career. It's never happened before. It's a one-off in 60 years of Super Bowl, of Super Bowl history. So just to assume it, and I think a lot of the media does almost speak as if it's an assumption that this is just a down year or two for the Chiefs. So very interested to see how their season goes next season, and I'm sure they will be only delighted to prove me wrong. Because they're obviously listening right now. The whole
yeah, they're focused on your every word, as they always are. They're watching. Shane.
Well, firstly, it's funny. Kieran was talking about the debate in the airport. I was on the other side of that debate. I definitely think the Chiefs have plenty of life left in them, so long as Andy Reid is still coaching them. But we have a lot of time to talk about that. I think the biggest thing, and this is something you were touching on, Connor, it's just the biggest thing I'm looking out for is how the Rams start constructing their roster this year. Like, are they going all in this year? Are they thinking of what they're doing post Matt Stafford? They're the fifth. They're the team with the fifth highest cap space to work with. I think it's roughly $40 million. So they have plenty of room to work. Not any major key areas they need to improve on immediately and start splashing the cash. Do they look to draft this year and develop, behind Matt Stafford for a year and try to bring in somebody else? Or, as I think could very well be the case, are they thinking about building the greatest show on surf with Joe Burrow next season and trying to win it this year with Matt Stafford, and then maybe just thinking enough cash in the bank.
Selfishly, as a Bears fan, I do not want Joe Burrow in the NFC, but like that is a sexy prospect.
Well, but think about it, because Joe Burrow isn't winning a Super Bowl in Cincinnati. I think we're all kind of agreed on that. That's because they just don't construct rosters well enough to do it. You put Joe Burrow in a situation where he's not where what he wants isn't what's done. It's what the head coach wants, and it's a very, very good head coach. So much so that the rest of the league can't help but keep picking off his coordinators and extending the tree to become the McVay coaching forest. That's how good that coaching system is and has been in the Rams for years, and it's probably still going to continue to be. I think Chris Shula, is going to be a fantastic head coach someday as well. So I think it's in LA. Remember the last time the Super Bowl was held in LA, they went for a sort of win now approach. And the years the rebuild in the doldrums lasted a few weeks afterwards, because that's just how good they were at rebuilding the roster. So I was very interested to see when free agency comes along, when the draft comes along, are they making picks to win now, or are they making picks to keep themselves as competitive as they possibly can? Because really they're a couple of plays away from winning the Super Bowl this year. They're very, very fine margins. They're a good enough team to do it. But then are they also thinking, let's not splash the cash because we're going to need some cash in the bank and some draft picks in the bank to maybe go for Joe Burrow next year? I think that's going to be intriguing over the course of the offseason.
Brian, what you got for us?
Before I do, I'd be stunned if the Rams were to move off the 2025 MVP quarterback in Matthew Stafford. But yeah, let's enjoy some wild trade rumors while we can have them. I'm going to be really selfish here, Connor. I know Kieran's alludes, and I very rarely go down the Giants route. But I am going to shy away from this time.
Except for the time before you spent an hour talking about the Giants in San Francisco.
That's where I'm coming. That was a dedicated podcast, Connor.
Well, it took a lot of dedication for the rest of us to get through it.
Well, look, do you know the good thing about that podcast was, Connor, and I put it out there, like Pat Leonard was absolutely on the money, because the Giants have now since brought in.
And I joke, of course, Pat Leonard is class act, and it was a great listen. Yeah,
Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, suggested that Joe Schoen won't be the GM for long. And in fact, the change in which the Giants are putting in place essentially is where Giant fans are up in arms because he wasn't removed of his services. Essentially, he has been removed of his services in a roundabout way, because if you read the speculation over the course of the last 2 days, we did a fantastic report in The Athletic by Ian O'Connor, who did a sit-down interview with John Harbaugh. Dawn Ponte, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her surname correctly, but essentially kind of she's now the one who everyone reports to, and then Torrent reports to John Harbaugh. And now Joe Schoen is essentially responsible for the scouting of players in particular around the draft. And I just think back to, and I know the Jets are dysfunctional, I think back to when Mike McCagnon managed the draft for the Jets, and then a week after the draft, they fired him. And I just wonder, had they joined so far down the road in terms of scrutinizing players for the draft that they didn't feel it was the right move to do now. But I don't know if that storyline has finally been written. And would it surprise me if Joe Schoen has gone after the draft and then a scouting team? No, I think Pat Leonard might be onto something there. As well as that, I'd be interested to see what the Giants do in free agency, because we're now going to see John Harbaugh type of signings as opposed to players that
I'm also interested to see who the Giants ship out, because I think there's going to be a roster clear out coming there, and a couple of interesting players could come up for grabs. Yeah,
and I'll throw one more when we're talking about mad permutations. Tyreek Hill back to the Jets. Oh, sorry, back to the Chiefs. Is that against the Rams' possibility? Because like Andy Reid seems to be the kind of head coach that can get the best out of him. They moved off him for the reasons at the time, but it kind of might be the right fit to bring him back this time around.
Yeah, and maybe Rashee Rice out the door. I wonder, has he burned the last of his bridges there? We shall see. Kieran O'Donovan, our final point for the recap. Football guy of the year. Who's your football guy of the year?
There's no point in asking anybody else, because this has already been presented. On Friday night in San Francisco, Adam Rank walked into the bar and presented Craig Rigdon, our very own Craig Rigdon, with the with the San Francisco MVP award, and for all of the content we put out, and we listened to Craig. We watched Craig Rigdon produce it, and when we were finished, when we had our heads in our hands at 4:00, Craig was only starting to make the magic. So he was putting those thumbnails
right.
in.
If you're watching this, Shane Brennan just did a Dumbledore clap, which will mean the world to Craig Rigdon.
And shout out
right now, and I just flashed his
Craig,
comment on the screen there.
Craig O'Rigdon. You give him his full name. Give him his full.
Craig O'Rigdon never saw an Englishman so uncomfortable as he was in the Irish consulate as well, by the way. But,
I was kind of getting used to it in the end. Like, he had a Belfast coffee, and that seemed to take the edge off. Craig
absolutely.
O'Rigdon.
So, and shout out to Ben Costello while we're at it as well. So the AV club was absolutely on full force in San Francisco. So yeah, football guy of the year for me was Craig Rigdon in all his football stat glory as well. A great company and a great guy as well.
Yeah, knocked it out of the park. I'm sure I'm going to leave the floor open for anyone who wants to follow that. Is there another candidate for football guy of the year before we wrap?
Cam Scatterbo.
Tim Hart, CBS.
I'm actually going to throw a head coach in there, Connor. Liam Cohn. Last July, Duval. Everybody was absolutely ripping him and the Jags for being a dysfunctional organisation. Well, no one's ripping them now, and we saw him firsthand in regular row walking around with a bit of swagger, and he deserves it for the accolades. Like, they're so close to beating the Bills in the playoffs, and he proved himself. He proved everyone wrong.
He was my honourable mention because he told Robert Saleh to keep his name out of his mouth as well, which I think of Will Smith when I hear those words. But chest out moment.
I'm gonna say, by the way, like, I do mean football guy of the year in the most inclusive fashion, and we're not, exclusively applying it to the patriarchy. There's lots of people we could throw in this category, including great.
He's been cut off.
Oh Jesus!
Just the key moment. We're about to figure out what it was.
The broadband just give up at the moment.
Oh, he's gone again.
That's going to look really bad now.
Football guy of the year won't be Connor's broadband provider. Hey, is he coming back to us?
He's gone. No. He's gone. He's completely
gone.
There we go. He's back.
I'm back in the room. What did I miss? So I guess get cut off at the most inopportune moment.
We are in suspense. We don't know what you were giving us. Go again.
No, I was just going to say that, I don't know where you lost me, but I did mean football guy of the year in the most inclusive sense, and not just in an exclusively patriarchal sense. There was lots of people we could put in this category, including lots of people we had in the show at the Moscone Centre, including Jordan Rodrigue, great friend of the show, Lindsay Rhodes and others. I'd throw them all into that category as well. So don't think we're being exclusive in making that award. My football guy of the year, and I just wanted to throw this one out there, Justin Fields, and we mentioned it at the time. When he got thrown under the bus by Jets owner Woody Johnson, didn't have a great season, had a couple of terrible games after actually an admittedly quite promising start in game one, which just goes to show you how week one can throw you a head fake. It was a terrible thing for Woody Johnson to do, and I thought Justin Fields was very brave and vulnerable to talk about what that felt like for him and how upset he was and what a difficult week he'd had. When he came out, turned it around and won the following game, he could have put that behind him and he could have just toughed it out or manned it out, but he didn't. I thought that was a real classy display of and difficult display of vulnerability on a national stage there, and fair play to him for discussing how he struggled with his mental health and how that put him in the blender and how he made his way back from it with the support of his friends and his family, chiefly his mother and his sister. I thought that was a different take on football guy of the year for me.
I've got three. Firstly, Matt Sims for teaching me how to throw a football. That was pretty cool. That man
it's not over yet. You still haven't learned.
He gave me one lesson, and I'm terrible. It's fine. I ain't got the snap. My arm position is completely gone. But he tried. He saw a man.
Point that toe, son. Point that toe.
he saw a man who clearly just does not have an arm, and was like, "Do you know what? I'm gonna."
Kieran Boyle, you're like Peyton Manning in that great SNL sketch. Are you trying to lose? Go on the Portaloo. Shut the door.
Sorry, Shane, I love the game too much.
Yeah, it's all fair. Yeah, I know. Yeah, people who do love the game should hate my throwing. That is completely fair. And then two people. Look, obviously, the fact that I got to be in the stadium when my team played the Super Bowl obviously comes down to one. I'll give it to Mike Vrabel, obviously for his sort of football guy, Warriors, and all the rest. A hell of a job done. But to of course the Irish NFL show crew at large. of which it would not be possible. But a particular shout out to Brian, because Brian is the only reason why I actually have a SIM card where I can use to call people on the phone. He's the only person I call on like a regular basis. Everybody else I text or I WhatsApp or I Instagram. But no, Brian's on the phone. He's like, that's the only way you get to Brian. You get to speak to him about just about anything.
I work the phones, guys. I work the phones. I'm like a GM.
My love extends to everybody, but my phone bill extends to Brian.
You started off with Matt Sims and you ended up with SIM cards. That was a lovely little segue, and that is our final segue of the 2025 season review. As we said, we'll be back with you very soon. We're taking a break from the live streams, but we will have podcast content coming at you. So check out our social channels for updates there, and keep tuning in on whatever social platform on which you are, podcast platform on which you pick us up on the Irish NFL Show.
You know great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.